Yeah. She's been in my garage before.
I've been to them all.
Okay. Yes, sir. All right. Everybody ready? I call to order the meeting of Tuesday, September 29th, a special meeting. We can have a moment of silence for all those served inside and outside our borders, please. All right, if you all please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, can we have roll call, please, Mary?
Mayor Adrian Sandoval.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Larry Clark.
Here.
Nick Ralston.
Here.
Spencer Bradnan. Troy Blum.
Here.
Jeremiah Overman.
There.
Oh, you can't pick me up out when we go out the hallways.
Maybe. Jeez. All right. Moving on, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, agenda approved. Audience participation. Do we have any? All right. Moving on to the approval of the consent agenda, which includes the minutes for the September 15th, 2020 regular meeting of the board.
Move to approve consent agenda as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda approved. Action items. First action item is appointment to the vacancy of the Board of Trustees created by the resignation of Harold Liggett. All right, I'm going to do things a little differently. I'm going to ask if each candidate will come up to the podium, introduce themselves, and say a little something about themselves and why you wanted to apply. And then I'll go around the room and ask trustees if they have any questions for either one of you. And then I will ask for a raise of hand for votes from the trustees, and we will appoint whoever gets the most votes. All right. Can we start with you, Mr. Calvert, please?
Sure.
My name is Mike Calper. I've been a citizen of Platteville for about 26 years. I've served as mayor, and I have served on the board of trustees. I know most of you. I don't believe I've met Trustee Overman. I've been active in the community for the 26 years I've lived here, and part of the reason why I have stepped forward to fill this position is because I see the town will be facing some little tougher times with the economy the way it is, with the downturn in the oil and gas industry. I can see that things are going to be a little more challenging. We have a sewer lagoon that we have to deal with, or that you have to deal with. And I had not run for re-election on the board, but times were pretty good and smooth at that time. So I thought maybe y'all didn't need me. But since that time, things have changed. Not only Platteville, but the entire country is going through a bit of turmoil. I just felt it's not a good time to be standing on the sidelines. I've never been one to stand on the sidelines. I know that there's you guys, you trustees have donated your time basically to the town. It's somewhat of a, I'd say, thankless job. You don't get publicity, accolades. You're not celebrities, and I understand that. I've been through it. My time as mayor of this town was back when we didn't have any money, back when, you know, we had to make hard decisions. I just felt like at this time, there's something to give to the town. So that's why I put my name in.
All
That's
right,
about all I got to say.
perfect. Do you have any questions for Mr. Kemper?
I do, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
Blue.
Mike, I don't know if you remember this, but about 3.5 years ago, our roles at this meeting were reversed, and I was applying to fill a vacancy.
I remember.
You were on the board.
Mhm.
And you asked me a question at the time that I'd like to repeat and ask of you.
You remember?
I do. I wrote it down on a sticky note, and I still have it.
I'll find it.
Is your motivation for being on the board, do you consider it to be a stepping stone in your future political career?
Well, I would have taken that step years ago if I felt that. The reason I felt it's important to be on the board is because it's the job of board members here, and I've over the years reminded people that in times of contention and when we're in disagreement, to stop, take a breath, and remember that even though we disagree, our goals are the betterment of Platteville. And that's part of the reason why I'm here. I plan to be here for the rest of my life. I don't have any intention of going anywhere. Of course, you never know what the future will bring. But I want to see this town thrive. I want to see it continue to be the town where people get along, where we all come together and we try to make the town better. And I don't remember asking that question.
I couldn't help but ask that of you. It caught me off guard at the time, and I will say your response is a lot more measured than mine was at the time.
Did you say hell no, or?
I think had I had those aspirations, I probably would have started 40 years earlier.
Yeah, me, well, 40 years earlier. I'd have been in my teens, but.
We'll give it 30 then.
All right, any more questions for Mr. Kelper? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Moore?
Hello, my name is Curtis Mork. I moved here in 2006, so 14-year resident. Shortly after moving here, I joined the Platteville Lions Club because the core mission of Lions International is the betterment of our community. No matter what it may be, whether it's helping to build a new picnic shelter or helping a family in need, whether it's health, disaster, whatever the case might be. My reason for wanting to join the board when I ran in April and now to fill this vacancy is, again, just helping the betterment of the community in any way that I can. I love to serve. I love to help people out. I always keep an ear out for things going on in town, whether it's a local family dealing with cancer or a car accident. Anytime I hear of that, I want to help them however I can, no matter how insignificant it may seem. So that is my purpose for wanting to be on the board here, is just to help further our community in however I can.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Moore?
Billy, Larry's not gonna ask me the same question.
Sorry. Well, I can, if you would you like
I just
me
found
to
it.
review it, or are you familiar with it?
Oh, no, I'm familiar with it. I was listening. I have never had any aspirations for further political career. Believe it or not, I was approached last year from people asking if I wanted to run for county commissioner. I've had people asking me if I wanted a school board. I don't want that kind of responsibility or that headache. I want to deal with matters that directly affect our town. And that's all I care about. And again, same thing with Mike. I plan on being here the rest of my life. We love where we live and we don't want to move. So you're probably stuck with me. But that's all.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Mr. Moore.
Thank you.
All right, we show a raise of hand, how many we have in favor for Mr. Calver. All right. And then by show of hands, for Mr. Mark. Okay. So at this time, I would like to appoint Mr. Calver. Thank you both for applying, I appreciate it. Oh, I was.
That's what I meant.
Yes, yep, yes. So at this time, I'd like to appoint Mr. Calvin to the Board of Trustees. Mary, would you do the honor of swearing him in, please?
Have fun. Well. Right.
Can you raise your right hand, please? Repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Michael Calver,
Do solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
that I will support and uphold the Constitution
that I will support and uphold the Constitution
and law of the United States of America
and law of the United States of America
and of the state of Colorado,
and of the state of Colorado,
the ordinances of the Town of Platteville,
the ordinances of the Town of Platteville,
and shall faithfully perform,
to
the best of my abilities,
the best of my abilities,
the duties of the office of trustee
the duties of the office of trustee
upon which I am about to enter.
on which I am about to enter. So help me God.
Congratulations. I'll have
Thank you, Curtis.
Thank you, Curtis.
Curtis.
All right, Mary, can we have roll call, please?
Okay. Mike Calper,
Here.
Nick Ralston,
Here.
Spencer Bradnan, Troy Blum,
Here.
Larry Clark,
Here.
Jeremiah Overman,
Here.
Mayor Adrian Sandoval.
Here. Thank you, Mary. All right, we're gonna jump right into a public hearing. So I'm going to recess the Board of Trustees meeting at this time at 7:36 p.m. and I'm gonna open the public hearing. And I will defer to Mr. Hyden.
Thank you, Mrs. Mayor. Tonight, Melissa Kinnick, town planner, is present. Most of you were probably in attendance at the last planning commission meeting, which is a little over a half hour ago. Jeremiah and Nick, you were not exactly in the room, but so we'll make this a little bit briefer than previous with the planning commission. The West Farm development came in 2009. My first year, my first full year as town manager. I'll never forget that year, but anyway. About 603 acres annexed in as PDB. The developer, over the course of the last 11 years, did not develop the property. This past year, so it was sold to LG Everest, who's present tonight, and with the representative. And Melissa and I and staff, David Brandon, part of the conversation, Stephen Ferris, Kinder Carberry, our consultant, to work on this application. So at this time, I'll defer to Melissa to present the staff report. And then after Melissa's staff report, defer to LG Everest.
All right, good evening. I think what I'll do, since we talked a little bit about where this is and what it is, I'll go to what you need to consider in making that decision. The first item is the PD amendment. You know, we're changing the zoning to allow the mining operation. And to do that, you need to consider, has the area changed from what it was zoned previously? At the time it was zoned, are there changes in the region that would necessitate a change in zoning? And as you have read in the staff report, we believe that there have been. The fact that it was zoned for residential, you know, pretty dense residential, and it hasn't developed. There's been no development on the site, and then we're approached by a mining operation, knowing that there's so much construction and activity like that in the region that there really is a need for sand and gravel. That looking at it from that perspective, we believe it's appropriate to rezone the property for the mining operation. So that's really the first consideration in this two-part request is for the PD amendment. The second is the subdivision proposal, and that is for 6 lots that are to support the mining operation. And there are several criteria that you've read about in the staff report, and I'll go through those briefly. The first are the water and sanitation. This operation will not hook up to the town water and sewer system. There's a well on the site that will be used for the water needed for the permanent facilities that will be on site, and then bottled water and porta potties will be used for the temporary facilities like the scale house, which moves around the site as the operation continues. So that's how the water and sewer will work. This is the first part of that, you know, it's a PD amendment, and a final development plan will be required prior to any operations, any mining operation. So with that will be several state permits that the applicant can address and did in the last hearing. And those permits will be required for them to obtain and submit to us as part of the application. So that'll address many of the issues that are related to the impact from mining, like the air quality issues and the water impacts and so forth. So that's another consideration. I wanted to talk a little bit about the adverse effects of an operation like this on site. And one of the ways that we are addressing that is through the hours of operation, which are from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday. So there are some limits. There's some hauling that can occur during daylight hours, off-site, taking overloading. They'll address kind of what that means if you have questions. That's not as loud and noisy, so we're really trying to protect the adjacent property owners as much as possible in this, and that's one of the ways that that's happening. Another important one is there's a park site, an 8-acre park site that is one of the lots that's being platted, and it's going to be conveyed to the town of Platteville. And that's been an important negotiation. It's a beautiful site that's adjacent to the river, and so with that will be a 10-foot trail easement that will be part of a trail system over time that will develop. But those are 2 amenities that are being conveyed. The park site will be conveyed with this development agreement that's part of the plat. The trail will be later with the final development plan. So I think those are the bigger items. The Planning Commission did hear that. Some of you were there. Hear the application this evening and made a favorable recommendation to you for both applications, the PD amendment and the plat. The development agreement is part of the plat application. And there were some questions that came up about traffic and traffic impacts. And one of the things that we discussed, and we referred this application to the county. We didn't get any formal written response, but they're aware, you know, on County Road 21, when we moved to the final development plan stage, there'll be a traffic impact study, and with that will be recommendations for road improvements. And that will also include a 21 and 66. So that was part of the conversation, road improvements, and then the truck hauling routes. And that will be addressed also with that traffic study. It's making agreements about how that will occur. But the basic understanding right now is that the trucks can't go through Platteville. So they won't go down 32 going east, 32 and a half going east. So with that, so two-part request. So the first, the PD amendment we're recommending based upon the findings of this application and the attached ordinance that goes with it. And we're also recommending the major subdivision with the development agreement, again with the findings in the staff report and the attached resolution. So I can answer any questions that you might have left. I guess I do want to add that at the planning commission hearing, there were people that spoke in opposition to this application, with their concerns related to their adjacent property owners, so they will be impacted. And what I heard and what was said is really it's probably the truck traffic that's the biggest concern. You know, obviously dust and noise are also concerns. So I can conclude there.
Any questions?
So traffic's not gonna be diverted through town, but limited to 21.
Correct.
And I'll know 21 and 66 are a bit dangerous as it is right now for them to make a left-hand turn on that. Is there any possibility or any talk with CDOT of getting turn lanes or some kind of?
There's been talk with CDOT and the county for quite a while now. This is to approve the zoning,
Okay.
and then when we move forward, they'll submit another plan where we'll specifically discuss what's going to happen with intersections and truck traffic and open space and effects to the environment and so on and so forth. Any questions? Matt, do you have anything to add?
No, I don't. Like I said, I'm available with any questions you guys might have. We're happy to answer. We're open book to you guys. So
I do have a question, but are you familiar with the gravel operation on 66 that I know is not yours? Right.
just south of 66, there, Vara companies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea how the size of that operation compares to what you had proposed for West Farms area? In terms of truck traffic, number of trucks going in and out?
I'm not familiar. I think on a annual volume basis, they might actually be smaller. But like I said in the previous meeting, we haven't developed the final plant design and operational design of how many tons per year we're projecting, or market studies and things like that. This is all very preliminary, but at this time I anticipate that operation would probably be a little bit smaller than what we're anticipating with West Farms.
But the estimate that was mentioned at the planning was 500 trucks a day.
As I said in the planning meeting, that's on the top side. So we don't want to come in and say it's only going to be 200 trucks, and so we did a conservative estimate that it might be up to 500 trucks a day, and that's not on a continuous every day. That would probably be like one of the maximum days. The next day might be 250, and so it's going to fluctuate. But
right, it's still supply and demand business.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, I'm just driven by bears many times, sure everyone here has, and just trying to compare in my own mind the number of trucks in and out of there to your proposed operation. That's a lot of truck traffic.
It is.
Okay, I just wanted to have something to compare it to. And
And as we go through the traffic impact study, as
Sure.
Melissa indicated, Weld County has a referral on that as well as CDOT. And they'll take a pretty close analysis or look at what that traffic count looks like. And most likely they'll have requirements of what to do with that intersection. And even at County Road 21 and 32.5, if there's any required improvements there.
Yeah, I understand that that's all down the road from here. No pun intended. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Any
I have a
questions?
question, and this is kind of away from it, Troy, and this is my recollection.
Mike,
So-
I'm sorry to interrupt. Can you speak into your microphone because some people watching at home can hear? Thank you.
This is regarding that bridge.
Mhm.
Is the maintenance of that bridge part of the maintenance agreement?
Not
With-
currently.
Not currently. Okay.
With another mining operation, years ago, the town annexed County Road 38 to the north. And we annexed that, initially for a sodbuster subdivision, which is 147 acres at Highway 60 and 38. Prior to us annexing that, there was a large gravel mine, it used to be called the Gilcrest Reservoir, which is on the very far west end of 38. So when that developed back in 2004, Will County drafted a long-term road maintenance agreement with the developer at the time. When we annexed it, the road, we acquired that maintenance agreement, where we do annual inspections and actually Lemke and the city of Aurora are part of that mining operation. And within the last 2 years, they repaid that road as part of the maintenance agreement. LG Evers currently, as part of the previous development agreement, is in the process, or will be very soon, of repaving essentially 32.5 from 21 into town, stopping at 23.5 for Sturkle. The town will do the last quarter mile, because that's our responsibility. So that'll be considered a long-term improvement. What we'll probably discuss in the next phase, when they do the traffic analysis and see where the trucks actually go, that's what we'll discuss, probably a long-term maintenance agreement if need be.
Thank you.
And that's fairly standard. And that bridge would have to be part of that consideration.
Any other questions? No? Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any questions from the public audience? All right. At this time, I'm gonna close the public hearing, seeing no other concerns, at 7:50 p.m. And we'll resume the regular meeting of the Board of Trustees, and I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve, I move to approve ordinance 791, an ordinance of the Board of Trustees for the Town of Platteville approving planned development zoning for the West Farms property, approving the associated final plat and development agreement, and acknowledging the creation of a vested property right.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carried. Thank you guys for all of your time.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Bill.
All right, moving on to resolution 2020-17, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Platteville approving the submission of a grant application to the Colorado Department of Local Affairs for matching funds for a new wastewater treatment plant. Mr. Rankin.
Thank you, Mrs. Bennett. As you're fully aware, we're in the process of designing a new wastewater treatment facility, as our sewer lagoons will no longer meet state regulatory requirements, primarily for nitrate, ammonia, and in the next permit we're anticipating phosphorus treatment and their regulations. So part of the conversation we've had in the last couple of years is funding. The estimated cost for this new wastewater facility is approximately $5.5 million. Several years ago, David and I and our consultants, JV engineers, met with Department of Local Affairs, DOLA, CDPHE, and the Urban Housing Authority, and the State Revolving Loan Program. We pre-qualified to obtain a long-term bond or direct loan. A direct loan is up to $3 million. A bond is anything over that. We're looking at a bond. It's not a voter-approved bond. It's the state revolving fund for the enterprise fund. So So part of that process, talking to DOLA several years ago, is that we would, at the time has come where we applied for DOLA Energy and Mineral Impact Tier 2 grant. Tier 1 is up to 200,000. Tier 2 is up to $1 million. We're applying for the full $1 million. I spoke to Chris LeMay, our new regional manager for DOLA. He replaced Don Sandoval. I emailed him last Thursday, and then I spoke to him twice today, once today, and then he left me a message. Currently in this cycle, because the oil and gas has dropped off significantly in the last year, severance tax funds are less available. They went from 3 grant cycles to 2. The last cycle for this year is October 1, this Thursday. JVA submitted to me as of last Thursday the draft application which you have in your packet. It's still a draft, it's not final. We're doing some tweaks as we typically do. So going back to talking to Mr. LeMay, it's a requirement of the grant to contact a regional manager. So Chris and I had a decent conversation today. He explained there's only 15 million available, more competitive than ever before because of the lack of funding from severance tax. And he anticipates a pretty high demand of applications coming in. Discussing our application, our project, he said what goes for us, or what benefits us, is we're, number one, we're under CDP requirements, so it's an impact that we have to comply with, no ifs, ands, or buts, that will impact the entire community, number one. Number two, the engineering will be done to design and build this plant probably by the end of this year, so it will be quote-unquote shovel-ready by next spring. So we plan on bidding it out for construction and actually break ground next summer. That's another big aspect for DOLA, because they want to have it a high qualifiable application. They want to make sure it moves forward very quickly. That's very key to them. So those are 2 positives for application. The biggest negative is of that $15 million, $2 million is essentially federal mineral interest funds, and the other $13 million are state funds. The way it works is we have an enterprise fund. So if you use money outside of the enterprise fund for facility improvements, it could jeopardize your enterprise status. So we can only use up to 10% of other monies. The $1 million grant from DOLA would jeopardize that, because it's way over 10% of the 5.5 million. If the 13 million of the state fund of that 15 would be used easy. So we got the phone, made some calls, called me back and let me know that there's 2 million available. So when we submit an application, we'd be applying for the 1 million out of the 2 million of federal funds, because that does not jeopardize the enterprise fund status, because it's federal money, not state money. It's a long story, but I'm trying to summarize. It's complicated. And then I told them that the town over the past couple of years has set aside right at $500,000 in Call Trust as a reserve fund for the sewer. So with that being said, the best case scenario is we get the grant. Our match is the 4.5 million that we'd have to go into debt obligation. It's not cash out of our pocket. It's our loan or our bond. And then we add the other $500,000. So our bond would actually be 3 million. So then we get a direct loan instead of a bond, which is a little bit better interest. Those are scenarios. Worst case, we don't get the DOLA grant. We have to fund $5.5 million. I would recommend the board using that $500,000 to lower that down to $5 million, and we do a bond for the next 20, 30 years. So.
And does this bond need to be repaid through the enterprise fund?
Yes.
Okay, and will we have to do some type of rate study regarding our sewer and whatnot?
In 2018, we did do a rate study.
We did that.
We completed that with Rob Tellis through JVA. And early last year, January approximately, the board approved to increase sewer usage and base rates by 53%. That was based upon the rate study.
But was that, the rate study was the existing system? If we have a bond that we have to pay back, how does that affect that rate study? Or was that included in the rate study?
It was included. The new facility at the estimated cost of $5.5 million was included, assuming we get a 30-year bond. The rate study looked at a 30-year bond for a loan. So, very good question. So that money that we're paying back as customers in Platteville the better part, or the best part, if there is one, is that there's no longer any anticipated height increases annually based upon that rate study. It's 1 or 2% annually. So the worst was last year.
Right, and that's why the board opted to hit with 53% once, let's get it over with, and then small adjustments afterwards.
And that impacts, how the increases, so it was the biggest increase. The other option is 3 years of about 14% and then go down to 1 or 2%. The board last year decided to do the 53%. I.e., quote what Larry stated, to pull off the Band-Aid approach, just get it done. And I told JBA when we did that increase, I said, you have to assure me, I didn't discuss it with the board, but you have to assure me that the inflationary rate won't increase this debt obligation to 6 or 6.5 million. So the 5.5 million is a fairly high estimate because I didn't want to redo the rate study and license customers of Platteville, so we're not doing that. Okay, so we feel pretty comfortable. DOLA will look at our numbers through this application. Part of what you don't have yet is the financial plan, so 1-page worksheet budget document, which essentially shows our entire budget, our total expenditures and revenues for all the funds, and then it specifies our enterprise funds, our tap fees, our base rates, our usage rates, and the analysis from Rocktellus, who did the rate study. They have to analyze all that. And that is key because in order to give out money, they want to assure that the community that receives it can maintain this infrastructure long-term. Otherwise, they wouldn't consider it. Plus, we have to be in good standing, and we've been debt-free for 12 years. We paid off the water loan from 1994's acquisition of Northern Water to bring CBT, and we paid that off 12 years ago. My first year as manager. So we've been fortunate, but now we're going back into debt, and we don't have a choice to. So, not trying to be long-winded or speak too long, but this application is very important. I can't guarantee we'll get it, but we're going to make it as competitive as possible. And I'm going to work with the engineer Shane White with JVA. He's the lead on this application. If you read it, you can tell I didn't write it. It has too much engineering lingo, but I have to fill in the dots, have the mayor's information. Anything that's in red or yellow are my comments, and then I have to meet with him again over the phone tomorrow to finalize this. Kinder, as a town attorney, has to submit as part of the grant requirement a tabor letter stating that during the special coordinated election in 1994, the town essentially de-bruised, which allows us to keep additional revenues year after year. Which if you don't de-bruise according to Colorado Tabor, then you have to get that money back. Every town de-bruises, obviously, so, to my knowledge. So that's it in a nutshell. I'm trying to summarize a long, difficult project in a short time, but this is a grant application. And I'm sure the board hopefully would allow this to go to DOLA, which will be submitted tomorrow afternoon.
Okay, any other questions, comments, concerns? All right, I entertain a motion, please.
Move to approve resolution 2020-17 as presented. Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to agreement for services, Ronald Avenue Detention Ponds, J2 Contracting, Mr. Rankin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This has been a pleasant surprise, even though I don't want to pay for it. We budgeted about $500,000 for this project. As you can see, the low bid came in from J2 Contracting out of 5 bids that we opened this past week of just under $350,000. So I was very pleased with that. The high bid was a little surprising, but the other 3, along with the ones who won it, were pretty competitive. Mountain Instructors here in town. I hadn't heard of Fortress Development before. Melvin Guy was the one that helped with the Veteran Memorial years ago, so they had a lot of time in project, which is great. He was very close. The Grand Excavating was a little too high, obviously. So I told David he didn't have to be here tonight. I can handle this. I'm asking the board to approve this agreement, and what the mayor will have to do is sign the bid form. This is from Steve Bathers, our engineer. He's the lead on this project. This will probably be his last big project as he's retiring by the end of December, and this is expected to be done by mid-December. And the next step will be The town attorney will review this and more than likely draft a specific contract for this project, which is standard. It's a construction contract, they're pretty straightforward. And the details of what was submitted in this packet is basically the scope of services for that standard construction contract. So I'm pleased with the outcome of this because it saved us money going into budget. Hopefully next year when we do bids for the actual paving and sidewalk of Reynolds Avenue, we'll have the same look. So I'm hoping, but I'm pleased. That's all I have.
Any questions, comments, concerns? Alright, I would entertain a motion, please.
I move to approve the agreement for services for Reynolds Avenue detention ponds with JT Contract Company Incorporated in the amount not to exceed $349,990.80, subject to attorney review and authorize mayor to execute the same.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please, Mary.
Mike Calver,
Aye.
Nick Ralston,
Aye.
Spencer Bragdon, Troy Blum,
Aye.
Larry Clark,
Right.
Jeremiah Overman.
Aye.
Alright, motion carries.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Okay, moving on to reports. Mr. Rankin, anything to add?
Just very quickly, later this week, I'll work with Mary. It's a short week, we have a special meeting, and then we have to get another packet out to you next week. Primarily, I'm going to go over the whole packet, but one will be sending out to you the draft budget for 2021. I will finalize that tomorrow. It's a very draft form. I just focus on basic operations revenues. So when I present that to you next Tuesday, it'll meet our goal requirement. It has to be submitted to the board and accepted by the board by October 15th. I'm sorry.
Was your schedule on your report? I'm sorry, just for Mr. Calvert.
I will have to send out another schedule for budget. I'll send that in the packet. So essentially, you will receive the draft budget next Tuesday. Our first session is Wednesday the 7th, next Wednesday. Then the following Tuesday, Wednesday, October 13th, 14th. Both study session nights at 6:30. Study sessions are always at 6:30. We'll have a regular board meeting on the 20th. And then the last study session on the 21st, if needed. I think we can get through in 3 sessions. And I talked briefly to the mayor. Last year, working with David Green, our account, we essentially put all of our special revenue capital funds into the capital improvement fund, but we still track each one, like sidewalk fees, overweight, oversized permits. But they're in one technical fund, they're easier to audit, easier to manage. So we went from about 18 to 10 funds. What I'm wanting to do this year, and I think this is probably the last change I'm going to make, but I was working with Carl, David, and Janet on their worksheets. And I tell them, here's your worksheet, but only focus on operations. Don't worry about benefits, wages, because you don't control that. The board has to adopt SURSA for property casualty work comp. We have health insurance. The board decides wages. And then it realized that over the years, I think Adrian brought it up one time, is that what is operations as far as, what is our cost in general fund operations versus payroll and benefits? So I decided this time to actually put all the payroll and benefits in one section of the budget. So when you see admin, police, public works, it's only operations. All of the payroll is still by each department. You'll see admin, police, not library, rec, seniors, and then you'll see all the work comp, all the health insurance, all longevity. So it's easier to track, Devin, for payroll. But if you want to see the total police budget, you'll just have to take the salaries and add it to the operation. I think it's better. I like it. What I want to give to you is this year's budget format to compare to the new format I'm giving you next Tuesday. Okay? I want you to see it. I like it. I hope you do too. But it's easier to manage on our end. Because, for example, public works on their salary. Mary has to do this every year with SURSA. There's a percentage that goes to parks, streets, this and that. Right now, all public works, other than sewer fund, because that's required, goes into one fund.
So if a citizen wanted to see how much our police salaries are, they could dig up the
One
budget and
number.
find it in one number. They don't have to go dig here and here and here and add those up.
And on top of that, police salaries includes SROs and crossing guard. It's one total line item. Okay? If you wanna know specifically what a SRO is paid or the crossing guard, I can tell you that. It just won't be in the budget. It won't be in the financials. So I want you to see that and see, you know, what your input is on that. And I'll send that out at least by this Friday in the packet.
What do you mean it won't be in the financials?
It will be in the financials,
Oh,
sorry.
it will be, okay.
Yeah, it will be in the budget, will be in the financials, sorry.
No, okay.
Because that'll essentially be what we track month to month. But I wanna mention that tonight, cause it's gonna look different. I think you'll like it. If you don't, we'll go back to more of a breakdown. And that's, as a management part of it, like over the years, we look at longevity and workers' comp. And the percentages always get skewed a little bit, you know, like, and what brought to my attention this year is David came in and said, why is my work comp line item twice as much as I budgeted? We didn't budget the town did. And then in the police, the longevity line item is way less than what we budgeted, because it's hard to keep those percentages correct. If you just put in one line item, you just subtract, it doesn't impact operation. So that's my argument, anyway. So you'll see that this Friday, if you open your packet, if not next week. So, otherwise, yeah, Mary and I have some stuff to do in the next couple of days. Should be fun. Mary's excited.
You can say it all right there.
She is just, she loves working with me because I get, no, just kidding.
It's never dull,
Kind of like combat pay, isn't it?
kind of.
She always asks me right before she finalizes the package, is there anything else? Yeah. Troy,
Yeah, what a Monday.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
In the last couple of years, I know, when we looked at salary, the increases were percentage based. So, what I'm curious about, some employee expenses in regards to payroll and para and so on and so forth. Obviously, with the para, the higher the salary, the higher the para contribution.
Sure.
So that the town's portion of that is also higher as well. Is it possible on a total employee cost to determine how much money would be subject to, for instance, I'll give an example of 1% pay increase, including all the benefits, the Social Security, so on and so forth. Is it possible to extract all those numbers?
It is, and I think this draft will show it better.
Okay.
Instead of looking throughout all the funds, you'll look at the one, basically fund within the general fund, which is going to be labeled employee salaries and benefits.
Uh-huh.
So I can have David Green, for example, in just that section show 2021 draft with no increase, 2021 draft with a 2% or 3%. And you'll see how those numbers change.
Okay.
Just in that one section.
Yeah, I think we were worked off an estimate, I know,
Mhm.
last year. It was pretty accurate, actually.
Yeah.
But it would just be easier for the board to know what the cost is gonna be ahead of time if we had those numbers in front of us.
Yeah, and I think it's more transparent in this format.
Sure.
And the reason I bring it up is years ago when I was police chief in Kansas, the town manager had this budget. He said, you guys can't control your benefits and your insurance and your wages. I want you to manage your operations. I, as manager, will control the rest. And it was an easy budget to do because it was from recruitment to fuel to uniforms to buying a backhoe, whatever. I mean, it was stuff that was tangible. You know why I brought that up later.
Absolutely, I do, yeah.
But, and then, you know, because each year, my department heads are trying to guesstimate those numbers. I tell them, don't, you can't. This is out of control. You have no idea how to guesstimate these numbers. You can't. So, anyway, take a look. We'll have a conversation more next Wednesday.
Okay.
Or next
It
Tuesday.
sounds like it's gonna be a lot more obvious,
I think
a lot
so.
easier to handle.
The way I look at the budget, and I hope you do too.
Okay.
If not, Dave agrees, so we have the other format, he'll just re-plug the numbers into the old format, easy as pie.
Okay, great, thanks.
I had a question, Mr. Yes, a question. Can you, moving forward with the planning process for LG Everest, can you include, the Herderts and the Columbos in the conversation and we'll keep them up to date on what's going on and what we're talking about with the developers and just help make them a part of it?
Absolutely, and I'm glad they had the notice tonight. And tonight's a prime example that people in the surrounding area, they watch what we do as a town for obvious reasons, because the impacts to them.
Absolutely.
I mean, even when we annexed up 85 to 60, and even down south, Cameron 24 on 85, we had that. 60 we annexed, we had some input. And that's why, I know Melissa's left, but the mayor and I talked today as part of our water smart team. We're gonna update the comprehensive plan. Number one, to add a stronger water component for long-term resiliency, so to speak. But number two is add a component of the rural area. When we do our comp plan, we talk about just the citizens of Platteville and our business. We need to talk more to the rural area because they control our growth and our future. Because the comp plan is really not about now, it's about the future. So that's going to come in 2021 as a budgetary conversation, but I want this board to be part of that public meeting process to just get their input with the two families here, the Plumbos and the Herbers, the Pyatt's and all the other ones in the county. So yeah, I will do that.
Perfect,
I
thank
will.
you. Awesome. Mary, do we wait for another meeting to, handle the planning commission vacancies? Mr. Cowper is on the planning commission, as a citizen advisor.
Don't they recommend a replacement, or do you? I don't know.
The board
I thought-
appoints planning commission members.
Right, I thought we did,
Okay.
yes.
Well, they did, I'll look, but I'm pretty sure the board appoints members to the planning commission. So what I would recommend is that you advertise the process, obviously not on the 6th, but possibly on the 20th. We'll have that as an action item.
And we need to make a motion and, okay. Perfect.
I'll verify that, but I'm pretty sure the board adopts the plan.
Okay.
Appoints, I said, not appoints.
Yes,
Sorry.
no, I know you meant, perfect. All right, Mike, would you be interested in staying on the planning commission as a board?
Sure.
member? Thank you.
And then you fill a citizen seat, okay?
Yeah, if we can advertise that and then in the next month or so fill that.
Okay.
Perfect.
And before you adjourn, I want to acknowledge we have a special guest tonight on a classroom assignment. Not to embarrass anybody, I have 5 boys and they went through this, but do you want to introduce anybody then?
It's my wife Hope and my daughter Zoe. She's just coming in to watch how town hall is done.
What class is it?
Just for government, she's learning government stuff.
Yay.
Cool.
That
Did you
was-
learn anything today?
Did you learn anything?
She forgot her notepad.
Yeah, she's not so sure she wants to be president now.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, give a speech.
Yeah, you can come back anytime, all right?
Well, yes,
Okay.
thank you for joining us tonight. It's exciting having people here. Yeah. All right, anything else before the board? All right, welcome again, Mr. Cowper. And we
Welcome,
stand
Mike.
adjourned.
Yes, I thank you all for